All right, class, I just wanted to go back and give some review on the expectations for quadrant form. So what you see in front of you is one of the advanced finished versions, the thing that we've been discussing in class. Okay, so again, the title of the assignment is quadrant form. This is due on the 12th for A-Day students, and it is due on the 13th for B-Day students, okay? So I'm going to flip through what has been done, and then I'm going to start completely over in regard for beginning students, okay? So the beginning students already have or should have began to shade all of the three sections on the left and then start to create an original composition on the lower right using a cone, a sphere, and a cylinder. All right, so the advanced assignment is almost exactly the same, except for it involves layering. So this is an example of one of the advanced assignments. This assignment has spheres in the upper left, just like the beginning assignment, but the minimum expectation for advanced is 5 spheres and 3 overlapping. The cone section requires that the students have 3 cones and focus on the areas that would be good areas for focal points. So I'm just going to tap on those with my pencil. So the intersection of thirds here, 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 and here. So in this particular composition, a good focal point area was the area where you see these tinier cones. For the advanced expectation, students were supposed to put 3 cylinders in the lower left. 2 of them had to be overlapping. And then on the lower right, for I believe it was third period, the students elected to have 5 forms in the lower right, and for sixth period and eighth period, the students elected to have 6 forms. So in the lower right-hand corner, what we should see from advanced is we should see the 4 basic forms being a 3-dimensional box, a cone, a sphere, and a cylinder. And you should either have 5 or 6 of them depending on what period you were in, okay? So again, this is the example for 8th period here. This is an advanced example. I have no idea why after class I ended up putting a little finger coming out of the box. It's just what happened, okay? Period 3 had this example. You see the basic minimums for cones here. So you needed 3 cones, you needed 3 cylinders where 2 were overlapping. Notice that overlapping was not a mandatory part of the upper right. And then of course there needed to be at least 5 spheres, 3 of which were overlapping, okay? Here's a beginning example again. If you are a beginning student, meaning you are in art concepts and not advanced art concepts, you should only have 1 sphere. Unless you want to do more, you can always do more. Okay, you should have 1 cone, you should have 1 cylinder, and then you should have 1 of each or 4 total in the bottom right. Now you can always have more. Okay, I went through and randomly numbered these during third period, and you guys helped me out by telling me which number is closest to the viewer, and one of the students let me know that they thought number 2 was closest to the viewer, and that was absolutely correct. Whereas the one furthest away, because of where the base touches, is number 4. So if the base is lower on the paper, it means that that object is closer to the viewer, and so therefore when it's finished, it should have the most amount of detail. All right, so I'd like to start over at the very beginning. One of the really great things about distance learning is that you have to learn to do everything, and you're not given these little childish handouts that you just fill in parts and pieces of. So one thing that I found beneficial is that you guys are having to practice your coordination in creating horizontal and vertical lines. So what you're going to do is you're going to estimate the center of this paper, meaning approximately choose the center. I don't want you to have to go out and actually measure this, but you will very carefully create a horizontal line. And you always want to look where you're going. That's good advice, not follow your pencil exactly where it is, and hopefully it'll stay pretty straight, okay? Now, the next thing is you're going to drop a vertical line. Again, it's going to be in the center, and this is going to create the quadrants that we have been discussing in class. All right, so I think I'm going to gear this demonstration towards the beginning students because the advanced students know that they have to do the same thing. They just have to do more of them and then they have to layer. So in the upper left, it was required of you that you draw a circle and transform it into a cylinder. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to think about a circle. I want to have it approximately 2.5 inches in diameter. And if I think circle and practice notating the circular mark, I'm going to come up with a circle. So hopefully sketching is going to help eliminate fear. So many students are afraid to put something on the page, and I don't want you to be afraid. I want you to start marking on the page, and if you like it, great, and if you don't like it, simply revise. So when we think circle, we come up with some lines that we don't need. Those are thoughts that are necessary to get to the conclusion of our circle. But when we are satisfied with the round contour of our circle, we'll erase the extra marks and keep the final contour, the one that we've decided that we like. All right, so in this assignment, as in all of them, it is recommended that you place a horizon line. The horizon line should establish the foreground from the background, and then the objects in the composition will help you figure out what's in the middle, okay? So I could say that this sphere right here is in the middle ground, and the cone would be in the foreground, and then this one, of course, back here is in the background. All right, so another thing I ask you to do is to draw an axis. So this would be a line that goes down the center. Then we started dividing this with an ellipse, okay? So the way that we're going to start is we're going to call this an ellipse. So it really looks like a circle. They got stretched on both sides. And then I also mentioned to you during your class periods that the connection point on the contour kind of looks like a little claw. Okay, and I think we also talked about it being a half moon shape. Get another paper here for you, and I'll draw that because I think it was a valuable discussion during class. So, whoops, that paper had something on it. All right, so if I talk about a little crescent moon shape, what I mean is something that looks like this. It also looks a bit like a toenail, okay? So this shape, I'm discussing it as maybe a claw, a little finger that wraps around and grabs it. And it is right there and double-sided, okay? So we are going to divide this extra space up with these ellipses so that we can shade in value. So I'm going to do my first crescent moon shape around the bottom edge. And notice that I'm coming out from the contour edge of the sphere. And I'm rotating around, just eyeballing about 1/4 of an inch from the actual contour, and then it shrinks gradually and makes it on into that little pinching section right here. Okay. So right now, if I counted these sections, I have 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now the minimum expectation is 6. If you have more than 6, that's okay, but you have to have at least 6. So in order to do 6 sections, I'm going to need about 5 lines. So I'm going to do a division here with another one. I'm not too worried if my sketch marks don't look perfect because I have an eraser and I can go back and I can take away those thoughts that were necessary to get to the desired result and I can move on. I don't want to do it super sloppy because that's a lot of erasing, so you're just trading work for work in a different way. All right, so it looks like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to divide this space in half at minimum. And that should give me the desired number of spaces. All right, so we also need to identify a shadowed area, and that area would be opposite the light source. And in this section, I asked for all of you guys to have your shadows going to the right. I'm doing this because I'm trying to get you to control light in multiple directions. Sometimes we do it always in the same direction. And sometimes we feel trapped by our tape. So we are Not going to worry too much about that. We're just going to carry it on back and come right back to the bottom of that sphere, and we're going to call this a little ellipse, and we're just going to leave it that way. Okay. The next thing is I'm going to move down here and I'm going to work on that cylinder. So I'm going to draw it right in the middle. If I'm a beginning student, if I'm an advanced student, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to organize it in layers. I'm going to start a cylinder with an oval. Okay, so if I draw that oval and I'm happy with it, as soon as I'm happy with it, I'm going to drop 2 vertical lines right from the outside edge of that oval. And then I'm going to remember that a cylinder deserves a reflected curve that is just as curvy as the top when we get to the bottom edge. All right, now I also have to divide this up so that it has the value stripes. So to do the first section, I am going to be dropping vertical lines right on the center, because on this section I'm asking that you maintain the highlight on the top center and that your shadows are out on the outside edge so that we can learn to turn a cylinder by using value. Okay, so the easiest way to think about the next step of dividing this up is to think about this as being a wide stripe right on the middle. We're going to take another wide stripe and we're going to put it on the right, and then we're going to put another wide stripe on the left. So I'm going to put 2 vertical lines. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and then we're going to count them and make sure that we have the proper amount. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that was the requirement for our class on this particular section. Okay, now I need a horizon line, so I can't forget that, so I'm going to go ahead and put a horizon line. In this case, the horizon line happens to continue to be near the top. This horizon line can be wherever it makes sense. So if it makes more sense to have it at the bottom, just understand that you're going to have less table space to draw on as far as the foreground goes. So the area behind the horizon line is often referred to as the background. For the right quadrant in this area here, I'm going to draw 1 cone if I'm a beginning student, and I'm going to do at least 3 of them if I'm an advanced student. Okay. So my cone as a beginning student is going to be front and center, because as your teacher, I want to be able to evaluate it and just make sure that you're not trying to hide by doing something super tiny. So I am going to ask that you guys try to keep the diameter or distance across your forms right around 2.5 to 3 inches so that I can take a look at it and I can see that you are not hiding and that you're proving that you're getting a mastery of pencil control, which means that we are improving our fine motor skills and we are developing mentally on how we communicate from our brain to our hand. Okay, so the bottom of a cone is rounded, kind of like we did on the cylinder over here. So I'm going to do that crescent moon shape again. And then if I had to draw the base for my triangle, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to erase that. Okay. On this cone, we're going to need 6 sections. So I'm going to drop a vertical line right down the middle, and then I'm going to spray angled lines out of it. Okay. So I can think about striping a wide stripe on this one, but the angled lines are gradually getting to the same angle as they are on the edge. So I want to choose an angle that splits the difference and draw that in so that I have a nice division. Okay, now on this particular section, I asked you to do a few more things for me. Okay, I want you to put a horizon line somewhere that you think looks good and makes sense. And then instead of casting the shadow to the right, this time I want it going to the left. So when I do that on a cone, I would advise that you start somewhere near the front center because this is the lowest part on the cone. You're going to cast a shadow to the left, so the light's hitting it from the right side, and so therefore the shadow's going to the left. And we're just making an ellipse that we think looks like it belongs to that cone. All right, so what I've done so far is I've composed these with the mandatory forms. I haven't shaded them yet. Of course, that's part of the requirement as well. But now I'm down here in the bottom right quadrant, and this area is where you get a lot more creative freedom. Okay, we're not going to be striping any of the cones, spheres, or cylinders, and we're also going to be bringing forward some of our knowledge from our previous assignment. Okay, so we will be referencing the value scale from the exploration of line. We may even be referencing the way that value wraps around our cup, which was our first gallery submission. And we will also be applying the knowledge of a three-dimensional box. Okay, so a box has not yet made its way into this particular assignment, but we did watch a video where a person did not use one-point perspectives as we did in class on this. Okay, so I'm going to go over that simple way of drawing a box for you before we go ahead and put it on our paper. So if I start out with a square or a rectangle, it is made up of two parallel pairs. Okay, one pair goes vertical and one pair goes horizontal. Okay, to simply turn this square into a three-dimensional box, I could start out with an angle. That's a diagonal line. And I could do the very same angle from the other corner over here. And then I could do the same angle again on a third corner. So I want to look at them and make sure that they look like they're right about the same angle. And then when I'm ready to close it up, I'm going to go to the top and make a flat line. You see I have a little extra piece. I'll just get rid of that. If I think this one is going to the left a little bit, I might want to fix that just to make sure that it doesn't look wrong, because I know that my diagonals have to look parallel for it to look right. I've got a vertical side, so therefore I should have a vertical back. Okay, now this works no matter what direction you put the box. If I want to do it smaller, so skinny, a little flat box, I can. And I'll use the same rules. I can go with an angled line, and an angled line, and they all have to be the same angle. That's really important. Then I can go flat line, vertical line, vertical line. All right. Then there's a third way of thinking about it. If I want to think about it going from one corner, like I'm looking at the corner of a box, I could put a pair of diagonal lines on the right of it, and then I could choose an angle, and I could put a pair of diagonal lines on the left. Then I could put vertical lines to close it off and think about what it means to have a parallel line. So this angle should be reflected with one that is exactly the same. Then I can go to this angle here and finish up this box and erase any other extra pieces. So the idea with showing you guys multiple ways to draw things and solve problems is so that when you get stuck and you're on your own, you can figure that out. Okay. Now, we'll have a lot more control over our drawings if we're relying on one-point perspective, and of course, sometimes it's required. But for this particular section, it's not required. In this section, you must have at least one box, one sphere, one cone, and one cylinder. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw the box. Let's see, where do I want to do this? I think I'll do it right here. Now I want you to have a very intuitive response to this paper, so just pick one and then draw it. Okay, it doesn't matter what size or where. Draw it large enough to where I can evaluate it. That's really important. I'm going to do the three-line example on this, so I'm going to make an angle, and an angle, and then I'm going to say this is flat, so this needs to be flat. And then this is straight, so this needs to be straight. All right, so check. I've checked off one of my requirements. I drew a three-dimensional box. Notice I'm not drawing really dark because I'm not done with it. I want to leave myself some room for error so that if I should decide to correct it, that I can, okay? So I know it's not really going to show space very well unless I put one of these guys in there, and that's a horizon line. Try to ignore the rest of these as if they are independent drawings so that it's not having an influence on where you put your line, but I think this looks like a good spot for this horizon line, and now it looks like there's a foreground space, a background space, and something that's in the middle ground. Now I have to put a sphere in here, so I'm going to look around and try to find a location that I think would be good for the sphere. Now keep in mind, if this is where the bottom of the box is, anything that's lower on the page will look closer to the viewer. So when I get ready to shade them, I'm going to want to give the one that's lowest the most amount of attention so that I can create some sense of perspective or some illusion that the page is moving back. Okay, so I am drawing a sphere in the lower right, and I made that decision pretty intuitively. I want to see a lot of different ideas from you guys. I don't want to see all the same thing. That's really boring. Nobody becomes an art teacher to be bored by looking at the work. I am not bored this year. There are some amazing, amazing drawings, and I'm so super proud of you guys. I think it's incredible that we are equally as strong online as we are in person. Okay. So I hope to share with you a very large file that one of my students is helping me put together of all of the amazing, amazing artwork that's been happening so far this year. So what we have so far is we have a sphere, we have a box. Okay, now part of the box got erased because it was behind the sphere. This is the layering technique that the advanced students have been working on. Okay. Now I have to put a cone and I have to put a cylinder. So it doesn't matter where I put it, but I do want to put it somewhere that it looks good. And I'm not limited to the minimums. If I want to put more than the minimum, I can. All right, so for some reason I'm looking at my paper and I would really like there to be another sphere back here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that because it seems like the right thing to do. So I know my teacher only wants one of each, but as the artist of this paper, I'm like, you know what, I think another sphere would look really good right there, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that, okay? Now, I think I'm going to put a cone right back here, and I don't want this cone to be extremely tall. In fact, I want it to be kind of small, just for interest, and I think if the top of it went here, it would just be a weird stop, so I'm going to intentionally make it just a little bit shorter. You guys will have to go through these problem-solving techniques as well. Make decisions about your work that look interesting and not awkward. Okay, so I think sometimes if some things start and stop in the same spot, it can look awkward. Sometimes it looks correct. But anyhow, be intuitive about it. Make choices that you think are good choices. Okay, so I have a box. It's a big box and it's right in the middle of the page, so I'm not really all that pleased about that. So I think I want to draw your attention this way to the right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a tall, skinny cylinder right over here and see if that helps me at all. And then at least I've met the minimums, and I have one extra sphere that kind of popped in out of nowhere there. So I'm looking at this, troubleshooting, problem solving. These two happen to be on the same plane because their bases touch in the same level. And I think it looks okay. I'm still not extremely happy with it. In fact, I really don't like how this is right in the middle. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get really creative and I'm going to block it with a cone. Okay, so I'm actually going to put a cone way down in the foreground and you're not going to be able to see the base of it because it's going to go off of my page. So hopefully this wasn't too much for a beginning student. I think if I train you to be a bit more of an advanced thinker while you're young, then our art culture is just going to improve and improve and improve. All right, so I'm going to flip back through and show you again all the different examples. Okay, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about how to assign value to these. All right, so going back to the very beginning. On this right quadrant, you should have it all shaded out, just like this one, where it's got white, and then the next lightest value, the next darkest value, a little darker, a little darker, a little darker, and a little darker, and then the shadow is darkest near the edge, and then it fades away. Okay, notice I applied a value carefully to the table and also to the background. All of that is required right here. On the upper left, where the sphere is, I should see the gray tones happening gradually from the ellipse on the upper left and then the shadow being cast to the right. The table does not have to be shaded, and neither does the background. Okay, that was just me trying to eliminate some work for you. Okay, so if you're an advanced student, all 5 of your spheres have to be shaded. The table, however, does not have to be unless you just want it to be. Now, on this one, I'd like you to control the value with having the lightest one on the top center. Notice I'm cleaning this up a little bit. You guys should always clean and refresh your work. One of my advanced students, Bethany, suggested this method where I use a paintbrush to flip away my erasers. I think that was a nice piece of advice, something that she learned online, I believe. There's no shadow here because the light is hitting the cylinder straight on. Okay. Here's another composition example. On this one, I stuck the cylinder through the cone. You guys can do whatever you want. Be creative. That's exciting. Here's an advanced example. I want to use my sticky note. Another advanced example. This one got really weird really quick. Another advanced example. I have a sphere that's getting squished between 2 of these boxes. I have a beginning example here. And then this, I believe, is a beginning example. Apparently, I like boxes to stick through things. You guys do whatever it is that is going to help you learn the best. And then when you get ready to shade, what I want you to remember is that I should not be seeing anybody hop up to a dark value right away. Okay, so I am going to very carefully show you how to build value once again. Okay, so when I say we are referencing the exploration of line assignment page, what I'm talking mostly about is these value scales here. We're talking about the one where we are not showing line work. Okay, so the reason your teacher, which not every teacher on campus requires this, the reason your teacher requires this is because I've seen over the years a lot of people hide behind smudging. So let me just demonstrate what smudging is so you know what not to do. And I know some of the other art teachers feel the same way. If a student puts value like this on paper, some students like to use other papers like this and rub it or rub it with their finger or tissue. That is a do not do. Okay, do not do that, because what happens is you eventually get to a point where you've never learned to control your pencil, and then it hinders your ability to become a better artist. Okay, so I want you to have a nice sharp and long pencil where you have a nice flat edge that you can use. For some reason, when I sharpen my pencil and my pencil sharpener, you can see a bulb on the end here. But what I would like you to do is I would like you to start out by applying kind of a middle tone value to your darkest area. And I want you to rub slowly in circles. Notice I'm holding way up on the pencil. You're going to start building these value areas up, and you're intentionally going to leave the stripes on this quadrant, this one, and this one. Okay, so on these ones, you are not going to do gradual building as seen in the YouTube video. Okay? You are going to apply it slowly, and then when you feel like you have medium value all the way around one of these crescent moons on the sphere, you're going to go all the way around with this, and then you're going to move into the next one. Okay? So what's going to happen is you're going to get this next one built up to that medium value, and you're going to start to lose this line. Okay, so when you start to lose that line, you are going to go back, and you're going to put another layer, and really not pressing very much harder. I am adding a little bit of pressure. It's actually coming from my index finger. And carefully doing what I refer to as raising the value. So I'm raising the value of this first one up a little bit darker, nice and slow. I'm not getting all aggressive. Save that for the sports film. What I'm doing is I am dirtying this paper by using different directions so that it builds up gradually. Okay, so when I feel that this one is a stage or two darker than this, I'll move to the next one, and then I'll go back So in the end, what I want you to do is I want you to carefully maintain those sections because you are proving to me that you can actually control your value. So I'm going to go back and show you one that's more finished so you guys can again see the expectations. In this right quadrant with the cone, we have the cone shaded from light to dark. Yours should also be like that, and it should have 6 sections of value that taper at the tip of the cone. It should have a shadow that fades away, and the table should be shaded. The background should be shaded. Okay. Notice there's not a lot of visible line work here. Yours should look a lot like this. Okay. On this one here, we see a circle that has a very, very definite highlight ellipse here, and then it gradually and progressively gets darker with a shadow being thrown to the right because the light source was on the left. Okay, on the cylinder, we've got a darker assignment that matches on both sides. We have a matching medium value and a matching lighter value and a highlight in the center. Inside of this oval, you'll more than likely have a darker value near the edge here, and it's going to fade away as you're seeing it happen here. And in this one, you need a horizon line. There does not need to be a shadow of any kind. All right, so I am going to be attaching the YouTube link on the gradations that were discussed today from the artist in the YouTube video. And on this section, what I should be seeing is shapes that have transitioning values. So the light should be blending and it should not be striped. So I don't want to see any striping in this piece of artwork on the right. So really you're viewing each one of these quadrants as a separate piece of artwork. It's just on a much smaller scale. Let me just remind you, if you are an A-Day student, it's going to be due October the 12th. If you're a B-Day student, October the 13th. Now, I did not stay late today to make this video for you to get these assignments on any other day except for these 2 days. If you want to turn it in early because you worked over the weekend, that's fine and acceptable. But if I'm going to all these extra steps and efforts for you, then I would expect that you can meet this deadline for me. You should have already been done with this one, and this one. So really what should be happening is a whole group of students having the entire weekend just to do this section here, okay? Now, if that is not the case, then of course follow the instructions in this video, complete this and turn in an excellent photograph of it, and make sure your photograph is in the proper orientation when you submit it. All right, guys, that is all I have for you. I hope that was really helpful. And I hope to see a lot of really great assignments coming in on the 12th and the 13th. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.